3.2 External Projects, Project 5, Sharing Your Work. I wanted to keep this reflective video more me talking about Project 5. There have been a few turning points, what with the practical aspect, the research, and also some galleries stroke exhibitions and some collaborations. I've been researching my knitting, and I've invested in two knitting machines, but unfortunately, I have been out of action over the past 2 weeks where they have required some new spare parts. So, this hasn't deterred me. I've been able to continue with the coursework, doing some research, and also adding work to my sketchbook, which for me at the moment is a core to my work, because I have given my practice a direction that it's going to follow more of a design aspect than a fine art. So, all in all, I've really enjoyed Project 5. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the exhibitions and galleries where I would potentially for the future I would see my work, because of the theme dyslexia with knitting and using the other theme of play and what is play. I could see my work out there, attracting an audience. I would potentially for the future like the audience to interact with the textile pieces, to make the connections with play. But again, this is going to be through more development and also learning about knitting techniques and so forth, so that I can piece together some ideas. I would like the knitted pieces to either be worn as playful pieces or pieces that you would actually sit and interact with them. So I've emailed places that would be applicable. So here in Kidderminster, Kidderminster Library have an exhibition area, and they've returned an email with contract and costings, and an application form. I've also contacted Bewdley Museum. They have an exhibition area that's a little bit more, possibly more mature, where the work would be just viewed visually. And my first port of call, which I haven't as of yet had too much success, has been the Carpet Museum here in Kidderminster, because I wanted it to hold an exhibition there because of it being textile based with the carpet industry. I've sent several emails and had one email back. It was quite basic and plain. So I forwarded another email asking for a little bit more in-depth detail on contracts and costings and so forth, and the duration, length of time for you could have the exhibition. So unfortunately, again, I heard nothing. So I've popped in today, and I've been fortunate to meet up with a guy that has been very helpful. So he's going to feed back the information to the person that is responsible for the organisation of exhibition and gallery space. So hopefully, touch wood, I'll hear something sometime next week. And this has also led on to sort of talking with clients at work. I've been able to do some research on some health and safety, and risks and so forth for a photo shoot. Consent forms, because I would like to do a collaboration with a fashion student, and they have offered to model some of the textile pieces. So that would be interesting, but I will need parental consent. I have managed to track down some forms and so forth and put together a folder with all this information in. So at the moment I'm collating lots of various pieces of information for the future. But I just want to be seen that this is the direction that I'm pushing the work, and hopefully something will come of it. But if not, then I have got some archive, and I've improved my knowledge within this area. I've learnt this through the course materials and so forth, and doing the studying there. So all in all, that's been very useful. As to the project, I simplified everything, and I used one line of inquiry, the raised line of the paper, and the sketchbook has followed this line of inquiry with drawings and so forth. And I have found that I've developed a process under discussion in my last tutorial, which I agreed with my tutor, that I needed to rely less on mixed media for the knitting, but all in all, it has become part of the process. Drawings have become part of the process, where I've been able to translate the drawings into knitted pieces as for an idea. But I've also continued with the mixed media aspect, because I have found that this has been able to make a translation into some of the knitted ideas using various yarns and so forth. And when I came to the hiccup with the replacement parts of my knitting machines, I was a little bit lost, because the two knitting machines are vintage and obviously wear and tear and so forth, and you really don't know what you're going to get when you make this purchase. So I went onto Facebook and popped in a search, the Bond knitting machine, and lo and behold, a group pops up. And fortunately, there is a very kind man, Andrew Potter, and through one thing or another and conversations of explaining my technical difficulties with this knitting machine, I've discovered that he is from the local area. He does live in Brighton, but his parents live up this way and he visits regularly. And he solved my problem with the mechanical side of the knitting machine. So, as you will see in the blog and on Instagram, I then became up and running and was knit. But he has offered to teach me some of the technical aspects of knitting, because he himself years ago was a textile student, and he worked for Bond knitting machines, where he used to sell them and had to carry out demonstrations. So I have taken this on board, and with his permission, I am going to carry out a collaboration with him to learn some new techniques. So I will be pushing my knitting forward, but I will still be using some mixed media. So there's a good balance and a good combination. I'm finding the flexible project plan with Padlet is working really well. I'm finding that using one blog page with a Padlet for sketchbooks, a Padlet for my practical work, and because as I've established, my academic writing isn't particularly strong, I've been using video format as a foundation, and I find this is a very useful platform for recording and documenting my ideas and just talking about samples, which I have done in Project 5 more so. I still have big concerns about my academic writing, and I will within my next tutorial. I really do need to speak to my tutor. I don't know whether I've lost the documentation of recording enough on my blog about my research, but I have been researching fashion and textiles. I've been purchasing second-hand books, and I've been looking at various practitioners, which is quite overwhelming. So I don't want to kind of pinpoint at any one point at this stage, because I wouldn't like to think that I'd kind of taken a practitioner and just kind of replicated their ideas. I'm very much inspired by the world of knitting and textiles and fashion. I follow a particular brand called Number One Granary. They are an educational platform for fashion, and they're very much into taking just a simple shape. It could be a fine art textile piece, and then they go through processes of design, development, and they turn it into a fashion piece that potentially becomes wearable. So those have been very interesting to follow. I've been following Notting Trent Valley, their knitwear course on Instagram, some absolute fabulous work. So all in all, I've been working, making, researching, and looking at and broadening my research now that I've kind of pinpointed where I am, that my work's going to be design based, and is fashion and textiles, which is good for me. Also, I will probably say a lot of the work still makes connections with emotional aspects, because I think dyslexia is an emotional subject matter, and the ideas of knitting being therapy and textile therapy, and how we carry out the processes to produce a knitted piece of fabric. And also as well, I'm still liking the idea of play and what is play. I've been playing with my textile pieces, as you will see on the blog, and really just looking forward to project 6. I've got some new ideas. I'm going to go back to the beginning of 3.2 external projects, and I'm going to now start to introduce the school report, possibly more so for colour palettes that I use, the ideas of the coloured ink. And also as well, I want to now start to introduce the red line for dyslexia within my knitwear. So there is a development of the raised line of the paper. I haven't been aware that I've been working with a colour palette on this assignment, but the monochrome and the neutrals did kind of work as a colour palette. And as we will see, I think, Jenny, you'll be quite pleased, I've gone all knit in this piece. This is an interpretation of one of the final pieces for the raised line of the paper using stripes and loops. So I've looked into the straight lines, and then through the knitting, and through working with my mannequin as a platform, I started to realise that the straight lines worked, and played with the idea of curves and straight lines. But also as well, I kind of quite like these loops, because even just as a textile piece, it's kind of working and playing. I've gone large scale with the pieces, using various yarns and threads, and learning more about the materials that I've been working with as part of the knitting process. Straight away, I just thought you could wear this, but also as well, I just like the fact that you can sit there and manipulate and play with it. So I feel that I'm now still working within my methodical cycle, which I think is part of my practice. So all in all, I feel as though I'm not necessarily working too in depth, because this evening I've started to look at the assessment criteria, and I had a go at where I would place myself. I still think there's a long way to go, but I think we're kind of getting there.